I call to order the Board of Trustee meeting for Tuesday, June 7, 2022, and the time is 6 o'clock. Ethical Principles Parliamentary Procedure. This meeting is for the purpose of conducting the business of the township. Observance of the basic rule of debate in any meeting will enhance its effectiveness through ensuring that discussion is orderly, that every member has the opportunity to speak with the wishes of the majority prevailing. There will be no personal attacks. A respectful attitude towards the public, employees, and colleagues will be maintained. The latest version of Robert's Rule of Order will be followed. Mr. Johnson, would you like to give the invocation?
Sure. You'd like to bow your heads with me? Dear Lord, thank you for this day, and thank you for Etna Township and this great country, the United States that we live in. I pray you be with us as we go through some hard times now, that you would give us strength, that you would protect those who protect us, and secure our freedoms. Be with those families as they miss their loved ones as they are out doing their duty. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. Evans?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Ms. McKee?
Here. I move to adopt the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
I'd like to amend the agenda. I move to add discussion on consultant duties, assignments, and communication. Add ORC 121.22 G1 to consider the discipline of a public employee or the investigation of complaints against a public employee. And I would like to remove the 3-minute limit on trustee comments and announcements because I think that is inadequate. That's my motion.
You want to add the ORC 121.122G, is that correct? Or
Yeah.
consider
We already have one for compensation. This is on the matter that I've been trying to address with this board and sir, Grover Monk. So I'd like to handle this in private rather than public. That's why I asked for an executive session.
This is separate. Okay.
Again, my hope would be to discuss it in private, not public.
Which one is that? Which one is it under the RC? 121.
The 22G1. Basically, it's the same thing we already have.
You have, but just with a different qualification because you have to state specifically what
I
it's.
guess it's two separate things.
Can I, is there a motion to?
Made a motion.
You're waiting, oh, that's right, waiting on a second. I move to adopt the agenda. Is there a second?
You already had a second, so
Yeah.
go back and roll call.
Oh, okay, roll
Would
call,
be-
yeah,
Would be
okay.
discussion first.
We already did discussion, that's when you just said what you had to say.
Well, that was a motion, but that was
Yeah, that was
discussion.
discussion, we just did a discussion. So,
And what are we voting on exactly? We're voting on your motion to adopt it as it is?
as it is,
All right.
roll call.
Mr. Evans?
No,
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes. I move to approve the minutes from March 15, and March 29, 2022. Is there a second?
Which version are we considering? There's two from 29. I submitted 2 changes.
Can I speak?
You can do that.
I made the corrections to March 15th that Mark wanted, and then I provided you the 2 versions for March 29th. March 29th, they
March
go pick from. The April 5th are done. I finished them today, but I didn't have them proofread yet.
Okay.
So I'll proofread them and get them over to you, and then we're going to get them last.
So these are as presented that we have right here for the March.
You have to pick which one in March 29th you want. I put a red on the header for March version, and then the other one was the one I presented.
Can we do these separately? Can we do these separately? And then we can, or just do about the same thing?
Well,
It might be easier because you have 2 versions to do them separately.
okay, let's do the March 15th first.
So you change your motion to just to March 15th only?
So I wanted to go ahead and adopt the March 15th as presented, 2022 regular meeting, and the March 29th as presented.
Presented from my
For
version.
the first version.
The ones we have.
This is where, yeah, from the first version. These are the ones
These
I-
got,
What's the first version?
March
She's been in the
15th.
ones I presented
The
at the
ones
last meeting.
at March 15th from the last meeting.
we just do one at a time. Just March 15th ones only, right now, on this one. Is that all right?
Okay, yeah.
All right, I'll second that.
Okay, that's fine.
And these have your additional things in this, I believe.
There was only one, it was on page 2, paragraph 6, just the addition of
So are we in
rural
discussion?
pledge.
Are we in discussion? Okay. So that's
Yes.
page 15. Okay. Roll call?
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes. That sounds right.
On your next set, the red is what Mark presented, and the others is the way I presented it to you in the last meeting. I didn't change anything.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion that we approve March 29th meeting minutes, special meeting minutes, without the corrections that Mr. Evans submitted.
I'll just second. Discussion?
Yes, I believe that is wholly inappropriate. If we're going to follow Robert's Rules of Order, Section 48, paragraph 4, line 6, requires motions to be recorded in the minutes unless they're withdrawn. The motions were not withdrawn,
Motion, it was never voted, they died.
they were made.
They were
And
died, so
if you read Section
I read
48,
it. I read it.
paragraph 4, line
No.
6, if it's made or taken, made or taken. So again, if we're going to follow Robert's rules, the motions for those resolutions should be included. Otherwise, people do not get a understanding of what happened in that meeting, and I'm not quite sure why the board doesn't want to include motions that were made.
But
Now,
if they died, okay, sorry.
they either made or taken as the text. And I sent that in the email to the board and the secretary. So that is Robert's rules. Now, if it was withdrawn, it would not be recorded. I did not withdraw those. They were made, so therefore they should be recorded.
Madam President,
Yes,
why don't we get an opinion from the prosecutor, the county prosecutor on this matter?
that's.
I already did.
Oh, you already did?
And
Mark Altier told me it was up to the majority of the board to decide whether to have them in or not.
Okay, there you have it.
And if we are going to follow Robert's Rules of Order, it is in Robert's Rules of Order. So are we going to just make up rules as we go?
Madam President, I believe we had the opinion from the prosecutor.
yes,
The majority of the Board of Trustees can determine that.
yes. Roll call?
Mr. Evans?
No.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Please come up to the podium and state your name and your address for the record. Is there any public comments?
Kaufmeyer, 29
Oh, is it?
Court, Southwest. Doesn't sound like fun. All right. Judy Kaufmeyer, 29 Roma Court, Southwest, Amazon West. Okay, first of all, I just want to say I'm very proud to be a resident of Etna Township. As residents, we are sincerely interested in the future of Etna Township, and this was clearly evident when 32 people volunteered to be part of the Comprehensive Land Use Planning Committee. I look forward to working with this group to move our township forward in a direction that aligns to the substantive wishes of our residents. I also believe that our trustees are serving our citizens of Etna Township for the good of Etna Township. When residents come to this forum to express their concerns over issues that are affecting them personally, it is the obligation of our trustees to address and hopefully solve those concerns. So they need to be taken very seriously. And at the last meeting, I mentioned Senate Bill 52, which was passed last fall and gives trustees and commissioners the power to declare exclusionary zones which prohibit energy farms from raping precious farmland. I also mentioned House Bill 429, which was seeking to water down that legislation. There was an assurance by some of the Ohio representatives that House Bill 429 was going nowhere. Well, just when you think you have kept the barbarians at bay, reinforcement barbarians show up. The most recent bill is House Bill 450, which is proposing community solar. Doesn't that sound sweet? The target is smaller landowners, 30 to 50 acres, or 30 to 65 acres. Darke County is the current area of interest, but as we know, this could be coming to a property near you. I have not read all of the proposed legislation yet, but it appears that House Bill 429 will eliminate township trustees and commissioners from having input in these decisions. More than ever, we must have our trustees united on these issues that will affect the landscape and lifestyle of Etna Township. And as I was driving here, coming up Refugee Road, I noticed, you know, if we think that, oh, this couldn't happen in Etna Township, there was a little sign right there advertising a company, a solar company. And that's right at Columbia Road and Refugee. So it is coming near us. And I do have copies of the Newark Advocate article about that proposed legislation, one for each.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we need to be vigilant, all your representatives.
Thank you. Is there any other public comments?
Good evening, Ron Sabatino with the Cumberland Trail. Let me first just add on this lady's comments that, you know, fuel's an important thing, and alternative fuel is a thing of the future. You're right that the trend is to go to the smaller farms that still generate a lot of clean electric power. I've seen a number of solar farms in planning and completed, in which most places use them as a conditional use. They absolutely do not exclude them, but they give the county and the township the right to consider them as conditional uses, so that the conditions of proper screening and so forth can be met to help, you know, our community and our country meet our needs in the future for clean energy. At any rate, I came here tonight to just talk briefly about, I spoke briefly with one of the trustees about the potential desire to have a resident appreciation day. We've kind of had them in part in the past with the goal to eventually, when Township built their park, to move the community events over to the park. So I simply want to say that if it's the township's desire to have a resident community appreciation day and provide fireworks, as has been done in the past, that those decisions would be made in near term.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's okay. We're glad to have you. How you doing?
How are you?
Good.
How are you? I just came to observe, but since talk, I'm going to ask that the trustees would consider Orchard Glen community.
Could you have your name and
Oh,
address,
yeah,
please?
Deborah Altman with the Orchard Glen community. And I'm at 26 Orchard Glen. We have 17 residents that are directly impacted by a commercial building that's directly behind us. It has huge lights flaring in our houses, in our bedrooms, all night long. Because there was no barrier put up, no beautification barrier was built, the zoning laws were not followed. I would have never bought there if I would have known that the township was not going to follow the zoning laws that were already in place. Requires so many canopy trees, 9 bushes every 100 feet between residential and commercial, and it does not get replaced by vinyl fence. The buildings are right on top of our property, the fence is right on top of my line, and everybody else's line. They built it right on the property line. Did not do a setback. They don't maintain the other side of the fence. My neighbor, 3 doors down, she has a pond that she can't even trim around because the fence is on top of that. So that pond, no drainage was put in. I called a couple times to the zoning inspector who said the drain was there on the southeast corner. We have a pond in our backyard every time it rains, and our sump pumps never shut down. I know you have a lot of big things in the township, big things, but I'm a taxpayer. All those 17 homes are taxpayers, and I just want consideration for our homes and our property. That's all, and thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you.
Okay.
God bless you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Madam President, if you don't mind, I'm going to give Ms. Altman my card so that we can follow up.
That's great.
Okay.
I've been addressing that too, Madam President, and trying to get with the zoning inspector. It has been ignored.
Can I ask the question, Debbie? How long have you had this problem?
Well, ever since I just woke up and had no cable, and they were cutting the cable lines and slamming it.
When was this? But how long ago was this? Was
I
it
think it's
last
been
year?
like 4 or 5 years now.
Okay.
It's been since they went in consortium.
Okay.
And I've been trying to get our zoning inspector to deal with this for quite a while. I went out there with the light meter and it was ignored by the zoning inspector up until recently. So this is a serious matter and it needs to be addressed.
The mosquitoes are really bad too from the water. We can add that.
Mosquitoes, yeah.
Mr. Singleton, we do need to address this.
Yeah, we're working on the mosquito. I'll be back.
I made a note.
Is there any other public comments? Okay. We want to move over into a public hearing. Come back to the reports. Yeah, no, he's Okay, great. Okay. I open the public hearing for the text amendment submitted by Etna Township for Article 18, Planned Residential Conservation District, or PRCD, Section 1804, Permitted Use, Item A, and Section 1806, PRCD, Item K. For the record, it is 6:20.
Second.
You didn't.
You don't have to, I put the time in there, sorry about that. The legal notice for the zoning commission hearing was in Pataskla Standard on April 28, 2022. In the trustees' hearing, it was the Pataskla Standard on May 26, 2022. The application was submitted to the Licking County Planning Commission for a non-binding recommendation on April 11, 2022. The Planning Commission Board met on April 25, 2022. The LCPC Board voted to provide a non-binary recommendation of a conditional approval. The Zoning Commission recommendation to the Board of Trustees to approve the application with the recommendation modification from the Licking County Planning Commission was received on May 17, 2022. John Singleton, would you like to present?
Yes, the proposal was sent to Licking County for the non-binding recommendation. Our conditional approval was as such. Section 1804, permitted uses, should be considered for adoption, which is requiring a minimum of 25% single-family dwellings in a PRCD overlay. On the same submission was a submission to amend Section 1806 PRCD development standards to not, not allow any connections between new developments and older developments that do not have sidewalks. That recommendation, they recommended to deny. Their reason for the recommendation to deny was this is in direct conflict with Licking County Planning Commission regulations. It's in conflict with our comprehensive plan, which talks about connectivity between developments, and it also could lead to litigation against the township down the road with conflicting regulations. And from the Planning Commission, the prosecutor's office, the township does not have the authority to implement regulations that are in direct conflict with other governmental agencies, the Planning Commission's regulations.
Thank you, John.
And the Etna Township Zoning Commission, their recommendation was to approve the recommendations from the Licking County Planning Commission, which would be approving the 25%, but denying the restriction on connection between neighborhoods.
Trustee comments?
I have a question. How does this line up with other developments that we have in the works here, having the 25%? Currently, that are already in the process of approved, they've all been approved, and
Everything that we have currently that have been on the table has been through the approval process and has been approved. The Planning Commission does regulate or does require substreets for future connection to neighboring properties. If those properties develop, then they would have to connect those substreets to provide interconnectivity. In this specific recommendation on PRCDs, we don't have any of those in progress. The only PRCD we have currently is Hoff Farms.
Where?
Hoff Farms.
it's all housing there, there's no other kind of...
Correct.
Just for the record, I brought forth that the 25% minimum for the single families, but it also, after the aftermath of the Pulte rezoning and them going to emergency access only after being told they must be connected. So there seems to be some ambiguity into what needs to be connected and what doesn't. And that was my intent here to state. I mean, if the passport could do that through our zoning process, why couldn't we have done that here? So maybe it was improper for the board to do that. The last term with the Pulte rezoning. But Mr. Siegler, I had a question on the last page on the staff recommendations, number 2. The last sentence says the existing standard likely should be removed from the text. They're referencing the standard that's in there now about connectivity. Is that correct? And should that therefore then be removed?
Which page are you on?
The last page of the pamphlet of the staff report. Paragraph 2, last sentence. So I believe in the staff report they also referenced that the language in there really shouldn't be in there requiring connectivity, as we have no authority to require that.
It is contrary to the adopted township comprehensive plan, which recommends interconnectivity. Therefore, the proposed amendment should not be considered for adoption. The existing standard likely should be removed from the text. I'm not sure what they mean by the existing standard.
Within the report, the standard of our text, which requires connectivity. If you read the PRCD text, it says the stub roads must be connected. This is what I believe they're referring to. And on page...
I can't speculate on that without talking to them.
Okay. Did you review this report thorough, or?
Yes.
Because on page... Page 6, they also mention that.
Was that?
No, this is one question.
Madam Chair or Madam President, whenever appropriate. This is a staff report that was not created by township staff, and my understanding of a public hearing is to receive public comments. I don't believe we're considering anything officially this evening. I don't believe we're discussing anything officially this evening. And some questions have been posed, and I'm sure we can find some answers to those questions. But I would just recommend that if there's no additional public comment, that we close the hearing and move on with the agenda.
Madam President, why wouldn't we discuss this when it's on the agenda after public comments?
It's a public hearing for the
Which then
public.
we could discuss.
Generally, I can say the way we do this is it's a public hearing for this, so he's announced it. The zone inspector explained it. This is now ready for public hearing. And then after that, we close the public hearing and then we discuss.
Correct.
So I think we're ready for public hearing, right?
So public comments. Any public comment?
Okay, so does that mean
Oh,
that,
you got it.
okay.
Sorry, Judy.
Judy Kaufmeyer, 29 Roman Court Southwest. All right, so Royal Acres does have the connectivity between a residential area that does not have sidewalks and one that does. And I'm assuming that when they build the one behind me, that will have sidewalks as well. And so this, I don't know, so I guess I see that it has already worked. And so what, is that what the discussion is about? Is that wondering if, you know, if these are compatible? Because I'm sure there are other examples throughout the township that show that compatibility between the old and new.
Yeah, and that's the thing is the county requires all developments to connect to each other. In your case, yours is not a PRCD, but it was still required. To make the connections, the proposal was to make all connections emergency access only, because you have one part that's got sidewalks, one that doesn't. You have some people walking on the street, some people on sidewalks, to create a safer environment. However, that specific standard from the Planning Commission is in direct conflict with their regulations, because it requires connectivity. Our comprehensive plan requires interconnectivity to create a neighborhood, interconnected neighborhoods. The proposal was to make these emergency access only, so the traffic you didn't have a lot of traffic coming from newer streets into older streets where you don't have sidewalks, basically to try to make it safer for the people who walk on the streets that don't have sidewalks. But it is in conflict with both of those sets of regulations.
Public comments?
Ryan Davis, 8807 Watkins Road. I guess I just have some more questions. I know I'm lucky to be selected for the committee. It's going to be discussing the comprehensive plan tomorrow night to get started to talk about it. Is this in reference to a specific application? Or what? I guess I'm just trying to find out why this is being discussed right now. I guess we're in the process of updating our comprehensive plan. I know there's been arguments on both sides about how the comprehensive plan is laid out now versus later. Is this something that was brought up by the county? How did this make the agenda tonight, I guess?
This was initiated by the Board of Trustees.
Okay.
Back in April.
Back in April. Okay. All right. Is this, I know the very first meeting I went to was the very first discussion on FedEx, and that was the public forum, and after that, public comments were closed. I guess from this point, what's going to be the next action after we close public comments right now for the board? Could you share with us what's going to happen next, I guess?
That'll be up to the board, but typically it would go back to discussion between the board, and then they would make their decision. They can either table it until, if they want further answers, or they can vote on it tonight.
Okay. And the options are to obviously stay and keep everything the same, which you say is in conflict with Licking County planning, or to adapt or to change to meet and to follow the Licking County plan. I'm just trying to catch up.
The recommendation from the zoning commission was to adopt the recommendation or comply with the recommendation from the planning commission, which would be to pass the minimum 25% but deny the, basically let me get the proper line.
It's all right, I'm a little bit.
But deny the interconnected streets being emergency access only. That was their recommendation.
So I guess I wanted to hear it again, because I probably was the only one that was maybe a little, how this got to where we're at, what we're talking about, what the goal is. So that's my only question.
Just to let you guys know, I didn't think about getting you a text for Exhibit A. That's the way it was originally submitted from the first resolution. So you guys can either do it that way. To do it the way the zoning commission recommended, the second set would not go in, the green would come out.
Are there any more comments?
Any more comments? Is there,
Just procedure-wise, if you close your public hearing, you have to act on it within 20 days.
that's right.
If you leave it open because you want more questions, then you have a little more time. Once you close it, the trustees have to make their decision within 20 days.
So what's the pleasure of the board, to recess or close?
No, I'm fine with closing it. This isn't a complicated matter. It's just a minor text change.
They can have that.
So is there a motion to close it?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Julie, roll call.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes.
Closed at 6:35.
Now, what I'm looking at here, Mark, when you submitted this, you were looking at the 25% is what minimum housing, correct? Single family homes.
Correct.
That's
Because
one
there was
issue.
a 25 maximum on the multifamily.
And that's one item. And then there's another part here that says the roads should not connect, they should be emergency only. The first issue was recommended approval by the county planning,
Correct.
and also by our zoning commission, correct? Okay. The second part was recommended denial by the county planning and by our zoning commission.
Correct.
Okay. Does that help?
And to explain a little bit, like I said, that on the first one, there was a 25% maximum on multifamily houses of the PRCD. The PRCD is a planned residential conservation district. It's what the majority of Etna is zoned with an overlay. Everything's pretty much south of 70 and east of 310 can be developed like that. There's only been 1.5 farms that was developed, I believe, in the history, and that was just all single-family homes. During the Pulte rezoning and referendum, there was threat to just put all apartments. It could be all apartments in that, and I think the intent of the planned residential conservation district was a mix of zoning, and I think if we have a maximum on the multifamily, a minimum on a single family, to give a well-developed neighborhood made sense, and that's what I recommended to do. And regarding the interconnectivity, again, with the Pulte rezoning, originally as a resident, I was told they must connect, full connection, and then it turned into, well, we could do emergency access only. So, and that's why if you could do it there you could do it here. So apparently it was improper then. I don't know. So I think we should follow law. Maybe if there's some change that we have to make it a comprehensive plan, that committee should look into that. But I do think one of the issues is the disparity of sidewalks and roads between neighborhoods existing and new. We've had numerous people almost hit through our neighborhood, and I know others too, where people are coming from areas with sidewalks, wide roads, going down to an 18-foot road, and so that was the reason there. And again, Etna Township agreed to do an emergency exit only, so I think we should look into that. However, my recommendation was improper. I don't think we should pass that, obviously. But I still, and I understand that the comprehensive plan committee is going to be going through their process. My intent on doing this now, it's a simple change, and there's a big push, especially with Intel now, for residential. So this is just one small safeguard until the comp plan committee comes with their recommendations, which could be, you know, in November or December, and several plans could already get through by now. So.
Madam President, if appropriate, excuse me. We do, once again, it's a public hearing. We have no consideration item on tonight's agenda for this item. It can easily be put on the next agenda for official consideration and discussion. So we can figure it out this evening, or we can take a couple weeks, make sure everybody understands what they're voting for, and vote for it then.
They have a resolution right now.
That's an option. They can do it tonight or wait 2 weeks and do it in 2 weeks.
And we've known this has been coming for quite a while. I hope everybody had some homework done, or at least ask all the questions tonight, and then if we have to get more answers, you know, maybe from the Lincoln County Planning Commission on that last statement of the existing text should be removed. Why the existing standard likely should be removed from the text. To me, existing standard means what we have in the zoning text right now.
But you meet your 20 days if you want to do it on the work session, I suppose.
So what's the next work session?
Right, if somebody in the public was interested in the actual vote, I'm just saying that, you know, there's a realistic possibility they would not attend tonight's meeting because it just advertises a public hearing. There is no official consideration.
Right.
That's the point I was hoping to make.
Our next meeting, work session is on the 21st. Yeah. So that's after 20 days, so.
You'd still have time to do
Yeah.
it. That's
Laura, has the past practice been just public hearings and a lot of times they're just decided that day?
It just depends on if they have questions or not. I mean, they've done a little bit of everything. If you don't think you're going to get your answers in the 20 days, you're better off to not close it, recess it. There have been times last year they got developers to waive that time period. There's been multiple different things.
Mr. Vance
Or
is-
you could even act on it this evening if you're ready.
Okay. Well, as I said, Mr. Vance seems to be saying that if we acted upon it, it'd be inappropriate.
No. What I'm saying is we're all fans of transparency. I'm trying to say it's not on the agenda that you're going to take a vote. The only thing on the agenda is a public hearing. That's all I'm trying to say.
So that's how we've always done it. We don't-
I understand that. I understand that.
If that's something we need to do, we can change that. We've always advertised public hearing. We've never put the resolution separate. I mean, we can do that now, but
Right.
that's never been done.
So going forward, we could just have a consideration item under the public hearing,
Right.
and then everybody clearly understands what's going to take place at the meeting. I guess, I just wanted to make a point with that, that's all.
Transparent.
But in answer to your question, Mark, if you can do any of that under the way that's listed on the agenda.
Do you want to get the one question answered you had about the way that was presented early on, you talked about?
Well, I think that, do we need to amend it to remove that existing text or just not approve the other one?
Remove the existing text you're talking about, existing text in.
Where requires connection, I believe that's what they're talking about.
The zoning commission approved it with the LCPC, so the second paragraph in green, that would not go in the way the zoning commission recommended.
Correct.
And that's what they talked about, removing that line out of it, okay.
No,
They followed the LCPC recommendation.
We're talking about two separate things. We talk about do not amend it with what I suggested, and they suggest the existing text should.
The zoning commission never discussed the existing text.
The LCPC.
Don't you recall, they didn't discuss that. They never discussed what you're talking about.
When I said page, if you look at,
Okay, so what text are you talking about? Is there like a sentence you can tell me that they're talking about in there? 'Cause I read this thing once, I think it confused me which one it was, but I thought it'd be clarified at this meeting actually.
says if neighboring parcels not yet developed, the development must provide substreets connected with some streets. I believe that's one about future connection, because I think they're saying that we don't have any power to require that.
But what you're saying, remove text out of our current zoning book, or remove text out
That's
of
what
our
they're saying, sure. The existing, that's existing.
So if we approve it, we should take it out of,
But we're not approving.
if we don't approve it, then we don't need to remove anything, correct?
Well, they're saying we
I make
should
a
maybe
motion
look into it.
to recess it and let this.
Yeah, that's
You don't have to recess, you guys already put it in the hearing,
Yeah.
so you will just hold off on, we'll wait till next meeting to,
On 21st.
When we table,
but like he said, it's not really technically on your agenda, I mean, you can table the decision if you want. Would you guys like one of us to reach out to LCTC for an explanation on that language? John, you want to do that? John, you gonna do it?
Okay.
So when's
Do
the
you want,
date?
do you want a
We got 20
formal
days.
motion on it, or do you want us to put it on the work session and get clarification?
Let's get on the work session.
no, for clarification, you say work session. at our
It's
next
a regular
regular,
agenda,
next regular
Yeah,
meeting.
what's that date? We have
the 21st.
that? 21st, okay.
So the decision will be made for the record on the 21st. and
Yes.
John Singleton will get a clarification on that.
Okay.
And then I can modify your resolution because to ask you what they're asking, you're going to approve it with modification.
Okay.
I'll fix that Exhibit A that I gave you to show. Mr. Mosier's not there.
Mr. Bill Mosier, would you like to present Pike Street project?
If you want me to.
Do we have to take roll call to close the public meeting?
We already did.
Did we?
We took roll call for it, I thought.
You closed the public
Okay,
meeting
just
at
wanted to make sure.
6:35.
Yes.
Well, thanks for having me, Trustee, Etna Township trustees. You all have a copy of the typical section of the Etna Pike Street project. I got a few extras here. We're not going to present it, or we're not going to show the overhead. Is that right, Dora? We're not going to show the overhead.
Sorry, Bill.
You
We're working
didn't
on
have
some new technology.
We had a power outage and the internet went down, and we had some technical difficulties today.
Okay, I've got a couple extra copies if anybody in the public wants one. I think Laura's got an extra copy, but this is a public involvement style typical section which shows what the road would look like. I don't know if there's enough to share.
We got a couple extra, I think.
So this is not,
You just want me to print the one pager?
yeah.
I'll go print some more.
This one, had it, it's pretty technical, but you gotta get one. The one that has the picture of people on bicycles, that's what I was gonna talk about right now. So, the thing that's changed since we first started talking about this is Trustee McKee and I made an application to get the roadway put on the federal aid system. That means that it would be eligible for federal funds, which is important so that we can pay for construction. That way we can at least apply for federal funds because it will be an expensive project, and I'll get to that in a minute. So we met with Morpsey. They were quite receptive, and in fact, Trustee McKee sent an email. We were notified this week that ODOT, in fact, did recommend it to Federal Highway Administration to put it on the federal aid system. As I understand it, that part of it is a rubber stamp. We've crossed the hurdle getting ODOT to approve it. It's going to be known as a collector road. The federal aid system includes arterials and collectors and different levels in between. It's not that exciting, but the important thing is now we can make application for federal funds for construction. That'll happen beginning next month. So I do want to kind of get some decisions made about how we want to approach this from the trustees. We don't have to make decisions tonight, but I want to lay the issues out on the table. Anytime you get federal funds, there's always strings attached. The big one in this case, we tried to anticipate all the strings that would be attached. It was always the grand plan to do what we're doing, and so far we've been successful. The one thing that we hadn't considered before is that the Federal Highway Administration requires that you make accommodations for bicycles. They give you some leeway on how you're going to do that. The preferred method is to put a 10-foot pathway on one side of the road or the other. So we had intended to put two 7-foot sidewalks adjacent to the roadway. So let's look at this typical section. The bulk of the project would be the lower one, where we show 2 parking lanes in addition to 2 travel lanes. On the right side, where you see the lady and the little girl walking, that's a 7-foot sidewalk, and we had originally planned that's what would be on both sides of the road. Also, there would be lighting on the project, and there would be curb and gutter. There would be the 8-foot parking lane on both sides of the road. This treatment we have 2 phases to the project. They would begin and end at, they would begin at State Route 310. Phase 1 would go east out to about the church, to that stream where the culvert is. That's 1,800 feet. Phase 2 would be the entire length of the road from 310 to the west out to US 40. We really only plan to construct phase 1 first, but I do want to ask the board tonight whether or not we want to go for everything at one time, because it may be difficult getting 2 grants.
Right. Madam President, if appropriate, are we speaking of the attributable grant fund? The attributable
funds is what.
Right, and
you guys went to training on this.
correct.
I couldn't make it. I had a conflict. I know how it's done. We submitted this project before and found out it wasn't on the federal aid system, which again is ironic because this is the national road and it wasn't on the federal aid system.
So we could you, and I'm just asking Bill, could you email us some clarification items that you need? Could we put those items on the agenda in 2 weeks, which is well before is it July 15th? Is that the deadline for that?
I've only heard July, I never heard a date. So that's like the deadlines?
Well, no, that's not the deadline, it's the first application.
And it's a preliminary application.
They call it a screening.
Yeah.
Correct.
They say they need minimal information. But I think what we need to know is, are we going to apply for the whole shooting match or just phase 1? There's risk if we go for the whole project. Okay, just to give some perspective about roadway construction inflation since we initiated this project, I was very comfortable with saying phase 1 would be $1 million. Phase 1 is now going to be probably between 1.5 and 2 million. This is without having any engineering information. I'm just using recent historic bid tabulations and construction costs of similar projects, kind of like square foot of pavement type of an estimate. So it's really rough, but I have to give you some perspective. I would say that it's, since 3 years ago, it's gone up about 50%. And it goes up so much with each project, you don't know. These contractors may not want to go for small projects and throw up high bids on it. We have that working against us too. So the rest of the project, again, it's hard to say. The rest of the project, we would have the same parking lane out to the edge of the platted area where, by the way, we have 80 feet of right-of-way in this section so that everybody knows how much right-of-way is available. When I say 80 feet, it's 40 feet each side of the center line of the road. That ends out on West Street, right around West Street, where the original plat for Old Etna was. And then beyond that, out to 40, it goes down to 60 feet. We would fit the parking lanes into the entire section where we have 80 feet, and then we would narrow it down to 2 lanes. So this phase 1 section from 310 to the east is 1,850 feet. For phase 2, which is west of 310, there's approximately 1,100 feet of parking lane. And then beyond that, there's about 1,500 feet of 2-lane. The 2-lane section is shown on the very top where it doesn't show parking. It's the same exact typical section, but it doesn't have 8 feet on each side for on-street parking. One of the points here, we could have saved another 2 feet of width by using straight curb rather than the curb and gutter. The curb and gutter is a 2-foot gutter pan that's tipped down at a steeper grade. That is beneficial for drainage, But the big thing is when you park, if you don't have that and you go to the curb down, your car door hits it. I thought that was, it's something I never thought of in my advanced age. It is a, and experience with this stuff. But that, I thought that was, you know, probably something that we wanted to do, even though it's a little more expensive and takes a little more width. I think it's probably a good idea to do 2-foot gutter pavement. So the phase 2 section, which is west of 310, you know, I said the one would be between 1.5 and 2. The rest of it might be between 2 and 3, just some number. Let's say 5 million versus 2 million. The township is going to have to come up with a 20% match. There's ways we can do that. You know, Ohio Public Works Commission. If you do your planning ahead of time, you can get $400,000 or $500,000 is typically the maximum grant for that. So let's say we go for the $2 million project, and I'm hoping that's a big conservative number. So what's 20% of $2 million? $400,000. So you pretty much get an OPWC grant to pay for your match. If we talk about double that, then maybe the township would have to come up with $400,000 or $500,000 from some other source, either your own sources, kind of at a loss for any kind of other grant you can have besides OPWC. You can't match federal money to federal money. You got to have either local or state money to match.
Is Sabatino's development contributing anything? Because I know usually developments with the roads that are connected to improve them, and that is his development required to improve anything on?
I have never heard that discussed by anybody. As I understand the Sabatino development, it's back here.
Right, that's connecting out there, and I thought that's where the roundabout was.
I don't know anything about a roundabout. We're not showing that so far. We're very preliminary, by the way, and I stopped the consultant working on this so that we didn't spend any more time and money. They are working on a lump sum contract, but still, we had to stop them because we want to see what you guys want to do. I got enough information here that we could get comments like this. I don't know anything about a roundabout at the end of the project.
Well, it hasn't been designed yet, correct?
This is,
Correct.
which?
This project has yet to be designed. You are seeking clarification on...
We have a preliminary design.
Okay.
I mean, it's called line grade and typical section. It's like, let's say 40% design. It's enough so that we can start answering more technical questions, but it's not too much that we can't back up and redo things. If they were full, complete sets of plans with a lot of detailing and quantity takes and all this sort of thing, then you start paying the consultant extra money. We stopped them at the time that we normally stop them to start going to the public and start answering questions and all these things because they can still make some changes.
So the clarification that you need at some point in time before the application is submitted is, do we want to pursue 100% of the project being designed and constructed, or do we want to pursue 50% of the project being designed?
Here's the way I see it, you know, that yes. I mean, obviously, if all things were equal, I would say go for the whole project because getting awarded, these funds are very competitive. You haven't gone for retrieval funds in quite a while, and you have that going for you. So the risk is, you know, do I go twice? And it might be very difficult to get 2 projects, certainly back-to-back cycles, it would be really hard. You might have to delay phase 2 for a couple of cycles, and the cycle's every 2 years. The downside of going for the whole project at once is it's a pretty good ask. I mean, if we got a $5 million project and we're asking for $4 million, you know, the 80%, $4 million's getting up there. I mean, I think the rule of thumb in the past for emergency attributable funds is the maximum is $6 million. And some of those are 20 and 30 and 40 million dollar projects where they ask for 6 million and they're trying to come up with the rest of that. So I need to start asking, you know, Morpsey and Ty Thompson and ODOT, you know, what's our chances on Pike Street, on Etna Pike Street of getting $4 million? That's the one thing that I need to do. And I need to give you that information to see what the risk might be. But hate to get nothing. I think that, you know, 80% of $2 million is a lot easier ask.
Okay.
Your odds are considerably better of getting.
And I've got a question, since this was started at the previous board. What was the impetus of this? What was the reason to really build Pike Street to this level, to this? Are the houses, is this all expected to go commercial? Is it all supposed to be rebuilt? It seems like it's very robust for what's here right now.
But it is. I mean, it is. But it's also a beautification project. The stated reason was pavement conditions and drainage to improve them. But I think that the vision was to have a village center, to have a more local community, to maybe attract some retail. Those are the things that I remember. If you've ever seen one of these projects, it really is a great impetus to start some improvements around like that sort of thing. The thing that you have all these big warehouses around here without much, so far, without much diversity in the type of development. What I see in this project is when you look at the 10-foot pathway, ODOT made us put a 10-foot pathway when we reconstructed 310. It does end at South Street. I thought it went to Pike, but it ends at South. I don't think that's a big problem because you can still take your bicycle and take a right on South Street and go one of these alleyways and put some sharrows on the road. Those are the painted chevron things that show a person on a bicycle on it, and still make your way to this 10-foot pathway. The only reason I brought up the Sabatino development was I think that's going to be residential and commercial retail.
It's mixed, yeah, it's mixed use.
It makes a nice loop. If that's going to be a residential area and you do want to build a village center that has more commercial, that pathway, it provides connectivity, the pathway for bicycles and pedestrians. In Granville, where I live, I see that people come out, they use those pathways, they walk into the downtown area.
And that was my question of, is the High Point 17 property, do they have to contribute to the improvements on that road? Like TPA with the refugee, that would be kind of instrumental if that could be towards our 20% match for some kind of reduction in our costs, because
the mission of the TID is, and the only way that I sold this to my board, because I had a lot of questions to my board, was that one of the primary criteria is it needs to support economic development. Well, when I see all the businesses around here and more businesses wanting to locate here, my contention was it makes it a more livable community and beautification and all that sort of thing. And it does support economic development. So, first of all, the Sabatino development wasn't around when we started talking about this. Secondly, typically when we get developer contributions to projects like on Refugee Road, they are fronting on that road and they need access from that road, and that's how we get them to contribute. Cities can charge impact fees, counties and townships cannot. It's a negotiation process.
well, as I said, my question was there something in the past, because I know there was a large TIF institute out there with an 80% back to the developer, and I don't know if that was part of that infrastructure. I just think we need to know all the information.
Yeah, I didn't.
Because I know it connects there, so.
And again, this kind of came after the fact that I'm not aware of any of that, if it was that way. And this is the first time I've heard about a roundabout. We talk about a roundabout at the end of this, on Pike Street.
Good, Jeff, because the whole board was, remember Mr. Carlisle held up, he doesn't like roundabouts, and then he came back and found some other way. What's that?
That was off of
Off of Route 10?
Yeah.
I thought it was back here by Pike Street.
Over by the airport when they were having the big roundabout discussion.
Right there?
Across the street,
There.
where the road would go in here, they were gonna put a roundabout.
That was within the development, it wasn't on.
With the, but then that
Right there
connected
when you
to,
come in off
but then
the
that
side.
connected to 40, okay. I'm just trying to figure out.
Yeah, it went all the way back through the development and came out back in here. But it wasn't part of the Pike Street. The roundabout was not on Pike Street.
Just connected to.
It was a long connector road, yeah. Eventually, it was there.
Yeah, again, typically, the way we're able to negotiate successfully with developers is, the traffic impact study shows that they're gonna have to do something for their access, to the access.
Right, I understand that.
Yeah, and we could either build a left turn lane in the middle of a road, or we can negotiate, take that money, put it into a larger project that accommodates a greater need. Then there's a mix, and that's a true public-private partnership. The public entity has to buy in that they own the road and they need to make improvements, but they're getting a little help this way. Of course, the other way to do this, as you know, is you can finance it. You can go to the State Infrastructure Bank and get a loan or sell some bonds, but you got to have a revenue stream to pay off the bonds, whether that's a TIF or JED or something like this, or general funds or something like that. But again, there needs to be buy-in that the public entity is responsible for a share, and the developer is responsible for a share, and you need to come to terms with that. I stress this because it's new. I mean, it used to be you go to your local ODOT district and you ask for the money, and they give you 80%, you came up with 20%, and you build it. That's off the table these days. I talked about the $20 and $30 million project that larger cities go for, and they get $6 million. They got to come up with $14 million somehow, not 20%. And so everybody's having to get creative these days. It's just the way it is.
And one quick question on the OPWC grant. We were talking about possibly maybe $400,000 on that. I know last year we didn't apply for the OPWC grant. We missed out on the rest of the roads in Etna proper. Here, most likely we would only be able to apply for one, correct?
Yeah, I mean, you're not, again, it's like everything else. You kind of have to get in line, and you need to plan your OPWC requests out several years. You come together on, you want to do a you're going to be due for resurfacing your subdivisions on this section this year, and
Okay.
so Etna might get one every 2 or 3 years, but that's a big ask for, but OPWC is not a huge program either, as you know. It's $2.5–3 million for the whole county.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to plan on proposing that for this year, but if we're going for this year, we're not going to, we'll probably just have the OPWC grant that wasn't applied for last year, for probably we'll just have to pay out of pocket this year. So, because those roads are pretty bad. So,
I even like the streets in Etna proper, other than Pike, correct?
other than that.
So Bill and Ross, at the training, did they tell you what year the construction funds are available? Was it like 2028 or something?
No, it was in 2020.
My recollection is it was within a couple of years.
So
Even
we're
if
a
it's-
couple of years out. So we'll have to probably recap that road or something until then. It's pretty bad.
Is it bad?
And it's a step-by-step process. The first step is to submit the application, and it seems that you need some clarification for the application before we
Yes.
submit that next month.
Yes.
And we've got another meeting on the 21st where that could be accomplished.
There's nothing fast about the federal process. I mean, Morpsey, they'll take 6 months to decide who's going to get the money. So to answer your question,
So Bill, if it's a couple of years out, could we apply for the OPWC grant for Etna proper this year, and then when those other funds come?
probably.
In 2–3 years, apply for this, so we're not missing out? Okay.
I would talk to your friendly county engineer and tell him that's your plan.
Because it needs.
That helps the plan.
Yeah. Right.
And he's the guy that he's in charge of the integrating committee for PWC. So I would talk to
So I
Jim.
know, and Rob Platt is a rep too, for, I think, district.
Yeah, but the counties are kind of run by the county
Yeah, too,
engineers. I'll see Jared tomorrow. Are you gonna be there?
But no, I've got a dental appointment for recanal.
Okay. So, I'll let you know about Refugee Road. Refugee Road, by the way, we're gonna be, going to be getting construction limits, the construction cost estimate by the end of the week. And that's going to be important so that we know how much money to ask for the SID loan. But back to this, yeah. I guess it's,
And then one quick question on the sidewalk. Is that sidewalk going to connect to the new park theoretically? Is there going to be a way to do that?
it's planned right now to go all the way to the traffic signal.
And then all the way out to 40?
Not to 40, to the stream. So there's,
So it's not going to be connected to the park,
I don't know which part you mean.
the new park?
He's talking about crossing 40.
On the other side of 40? No. I mean, it's not going to the other side of 40. Do I understand that 40 is going to be realigned? Pike Street is going to be realigned to 40.
That's the drawings I sent you today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Send it to me.
that makes sense.
I
when
know,
you see
but I
that.
wasn't explaining.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we need to talk about those details. For now, though, I'm going to talk to ODOT, talk to Morpsey, and ask them, about our chances to get funding for the entire project or half the project, so that you can make that decision.
My preference would be the entire, you'd probably more bang for the buck economy, get the larger project, people bidding on the larger projects now, instead of inflating the smaller one.
Yeah, I mean, the risk reward, because
If we do it
It's
later,
another 2
the cost
years.
is just going to be higher.
the construction costs will be higher, but it's another 2 years before you can make application.
And I prefer to do the whole thing.
Debbie says it's hard to get at that point too. And
And it's,
is there her chances that end down there is probably not as much likely to have any kind of economic
I don't
benefit or
think
not?
so. Morpsey doesn't care about that. My
Okay.
TID board did. There's no economic development points that Morpsey shared with you at this training class? Is there, Bill, or,
Say economic development points.
yeah, in the scoring process? I'll look into
There's
that.
a lot of information, but I can tell you, they had 2 different categories for us.
You're talking about how you score at PwC, you're wondering if there were some points up there similar.
Everybody wants economic development for highways, but I honestly, this is SCP funds, and I don't think that there's points
I
in that.
can actually send you, Bill, it was a PowerPoint that they presented to us,
Okay.
which is available on the
Yeah.
Wharton website.
I think what you were just looking for is they got separate pathway money
Right.
from roadway money, and we're gonna be going for all of it. Or we're just gonna be going for the roadway money. But what they could do, since it has a pathway, and this could help us, is say, okay, we've got $4 million in roadway and $1 million in pathway. So they could take it out of their 2 other funding pots, and that could be helpful. But that's something they do internally. But it'll be a good question. Bill, if you want to be involved when I start asking questions, if you want to meet with somebody.
Well, I think we're meeting tomorrow, so we can discuss some of these things informally as well.
Okay. Laura, you said that there might be some people that had questions about how the project will impact their...
I know the residents in the corner back there are down there right now. I don't know if you have any questions. I recognize them.
I can certainly meet with anybody. We only have so much information right now. The problem with these projects is when we have 40 feet from the center of the road and we live within 20 feet for 150 years, it's not apparent that, that there's right-of-way clear into somebody's front yard. We have the legal ability to go occupy it and construct, and hopefully we'll get off of it and make it look better, but this gets to be the difficulty with these
Their
kinds
house
of
is down by
projects.
the church. They don't have as many issues as the other one you talked to. Theirs is across from the church up on that hill.
Yeah.
And I do have a concern about, you're talking about the proximity to the existing houses.
Yeah.
We've got street lights on the edge past the sidewalk closest to their house. Is that going to be just like a
So the
especially
streetlights-
those globe lights
The street lights are gonna go at the intersections.
only.
Yeah,
Okay.
but there's a lot of intersections and there's houses close to the intersections.
Is there a way to put shielding on those lights or just to stop it from going towards the house? That would be my concern.
Yes, and we can
One,
discuss that. So again, the deal with the double that you make when you go for federal funds also is ODOT takes over the advancement of the project. I need to circle back with them and see what kind of public involvement meetings we need to have to discuss things like what you just said. Hopefully it won't be too much, but this is part of the public process.
Right, the advancement of the project, that means they administrate the project,
Yep.
and they get their...
TIVB out of it then? No.
They have different levels of oversight, and don't forget, we built this 310 project, and they were just kind of looking over our shoulder, and we were able to handle it.
So do you need a decision today on anything?
No. But it's coming because we're in June, and we've got to make the big things. We need to know what amount of money we're asking for the screening application.
And Madam President, if appropriate, and I believe we potentially have 2 meetings before the application has to be submitted. So we have time to figure out what kind of clarification you need. We can talk about it more on the 21st, and there's also a meeting July 5th. And then I believe the application preliminary submittal date is after the 5th.
Yes.
Commonly, Trustee McKee's in the point person for this project. Commonly, we work through issues offline, and then that trustee brings it back to the rest of the board in public session. I certainly can keep doing this, but it gets to be, we can't sit and go through property impacts in a public session. We have to conduct engineering business offline to some extent and then bring back the decision making to the board in open session. It's typically the way it goes.
I would just make a suggestion is before, if you just copied other trustees, I'd be interested just to forward that information, and so then when we come to it, we have that information on hand.
And that's the way I've done it before. You guys decide this. I don't want to get involved in family stuff, but I can share information with the 3 of you at the same time. What we can't do is get a bunch of dialogue going.
No dialogue, just
Usually I put the disclaimer on there that this is not intended to create dialogue. This is for information sharing.
That's correct.
So.
Right, and I mean, the goal that I'm attempting to communicate at the very least is just clarify the decisions, the direction that the engineers need, and have those issues discussed at one of the next 2 meetings, if not both of the next 2 meetings. And in between now and then, any information associated with the clarification we provide to all 3 trustees so that they can start to formulate some opinions, get educated for discussion, and then give you everything you need prior to the submittal of the application. That's the ultimate goal, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to design the project right now. 40% of it pretty much is figured out. We just need to submit the application, make sure that there's funding going forward, and then at that point in time, when the application is approved ideally, then we can, hit the design process and come up with a construction schedule, et cetera.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I misspoke. July 15th is the application due date. By August 17th, we'll have a feedback from Morrissey. And September 28th, the final application.
September. I did make application for this project before, so it shouldn't be hard. I think I only did phase 1 though. But that's when we unwittingly discovered we weren't on the federal license.
Yeah.
Phase 1 is the east end.
Yeah.
So the point person will make sure that everybody gets the information equally.
It's up to you guys. I
Yes.
really don't want
Craig, I guess I was just stating it as my understanding at the staff level.
Bill, stay on.
to, yeah, as much as I can. I'm no longer elected and I'm loving it. Okay, any other questions? And I'll update you on refugee tomorrow.
Okay. I have some questions on the Etna thoroughfare too and some other things. I'll get with you. Okay, this week. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Reports now. Okay, so we go ahead and move on to our reports under the Parks and Recreation. I want to make a motion to approve an additional $4,200 for surveying to meet the Licking County Planning Commission requirement for the S.A. England surveying to purchase the properties for the park. Do you have any information you want to share with that, Mr. Singleton?
You made the motion, so you need a second.
I need a second.
Second.
Discussion?
Is this proper under reports, or should this have been added to the agenda as a line item?
Well, it's under, well,
She can adopt, she need.
I'm Parks and Recreation, so I just went on and did it under Parks and Recreation as a report.
So I can add things under roads, just to be clear.
She just received it.
So
Just
I wanted to get on there, so. You got a discussion on it, Mark? Mr. Trustee?
Regarding, is this going to facilitate the lot splits you're saying, to finalize that?
Yes. Exactly.
Do we have a due date on that? Because like I said, Mr. Snyder's been contacting me, and he's concerned that this, I believe June is the deadline, is it not? Are we in the month of
July 1st.
July.
1st? I mean, are we going to meet that for him because he's got financial obligations?
And that's why, this is why the S.A. England survey worked hard to get this done for us. And I just got word on this on Friday.
So this wasn't included in the other stuff. This is extra that just came up.
Yes, it costs a little extra.
Do you have an estimate or you take forward on this?
Surveying the meeting for the commission to pay that additional $40,000.
Do you have paperwork on it, or? Mr. Singleton, have you reviewed this? Is this required to complete that lot split?
Yes, well, what it is Licking County Planning Commission required the remainder parcels to be surveyed before they would approve anything along the lines of the lot split. So the surveyor had to come back out and survey the remainder parcels to.
So this work's already been completed?
Yes.
They're just asking to be paid for it?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's. Thank you.
Roll call?
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee? Ms. McKee?
Yes. Road Department?
The road department continues to repair the roads, a lot of crack sealing and that. We're waiting on the finalization of the pavement management group. They finalized the video capture of the roads, and they're now analyzing that. So I should have the report recommendation pretty soon. I was at the Township meeting, the youth pavement management group. Also, they've already completed the bids with the various improvements, so we're a little behind the eight ball on this because it was delayed in getting approved. So like I said, right now we're just going around repairing the roads as we can. Going to have to look at now Pike Street and the proper what to do with the road replacement and resurfacing. And they've completed their first mowing, and they're just continuing on that. So everything's going well there.
Zoning report?
I don't have a zoning report for this meeting. Power went out this morning when I was in the middle of doing it. About 15 minutes after the power came back on, the internet went down. And it didn't come back on until about 4 o'clock.
I did have a question on zoning. Mr. Singleton, I did bring a couple issues to you regarding the light at Storage 1. You did finally get back to me on that after about a month. We got to be a little bit quicker on these responses for these instances. But on that one, I understand it's being sold, but can't we issue violations? Because I've been on this since I've been in office.
They can issue a violation, but by the time the violation comes due, it's gonna be under a different ownership, then we'd have to start back over again.
I think we gotta be a little bit quicker, because I brought these up to your attention early on. I mean, I think it was January. But as far as Blue Monkey and the lights there, is there any violations, or that motel is there pointed out, and that is highlight?
I haven't been out there after dark. I'll come in one night and take a look at them, but I have not been out there after dark.
Okay. Essentially the light meters and stuff like that. I think we need to start working on these violations.
I cannot, unfortunately, you may be a trustee, but I cannot take pictures you send me and act on those. I have to see it myself in order to write a violation.
No, but this is, the Blue Monkey specifically, you had indicated, well, they turned it down a little bit. They're still pointing out. The hotel, the motel is pointing directly out. I mean, I think it's a concern for the community, especially the storage one. We need to address that as soon as possible.
Thank you. Operations report.
Let's look at the application. I'm sorry, which one?
Operations report.
Oh, it's operations going fine. We're getting requests for assistance, and we appreciate those opportunities to assist folks with issues that enhance their property values and quality of life. And just completed my first month, so I'm still learning my way around, working with staff, figuring out where things are located, etc. But the big thing we want to basically communicate to anybody interested these days is, Etna Township is here to assist you with whatever you're looking to accomplish. Ideally, good things in Etna Township that are collectively beneficial. So we appreciate those opportunities. So we will take a second look at the storage one and the Blue Monkey as a result of some of the comments tonight, and go from there.
Another question on that. You talked about this. Are you going to work with me on those issues, as I've been dealing with these quite well?
Trustee McKee, I'll just go ahead and say this. We do have some situations that took place in the past of your doing, not my doing, and you have identified yourself to me based upon those actions, to be somebody that's not looking out for my best interest. Actually, I choose not to work with hostile individuals individually. I work for the board of trustees. My contract says I work for the board of trustees. And if the board of trustees directs me to work with you on a certain project, which they have yet to do, I would certainly have to make a decision in that regard.
Can I ask who directed you to work on all these? The board didn't, one trustee did. You're following one trustee.
I am a man. Madam President, I'm not going to argue with somebody that does not have my best interest. So
Let's go for the water,
I have the
sewer.
township's best interest.
Water and sewer report, please. Mr. Vance.
we did have an opportunity to learn more about the water and sewer capacity. There is a definite shortage in sewer capacity available to the Etna Township area. The good thing is the Water and Sewer District does have a piece of property to place a wastewater treatment plant on, and I think at this point in time, Etna Township leadership should consider how they want to promote the fact that Etna Township is interested in working with the county, working with the Water and Sewer District, working with the state to find the funding necessary to increase sewer capacity available to this area of Licking County. I think that's an absolute priority, and that's something as a management consultant I chose to follow up on without majority direction of the Township Board of Trustees.
And I'd like to state as the appointee for the past issue with financing. I've been working with Rob Platt. We haven't met in a while, but the district did have a rate study implemented, and they did go over that at their last special meeting. At their upcoming meeting, they will discuss the various options. One of my concerns is that they indicate that the developers should pay for the expanding capacity, but those are actually through TIFs, which are just a give back to the developer of the income taxes collected. So again, that's more of the community paying for it. I think we've got to keep an eye on development paying for this, and not the community, not at the detriment of the schools and such. So I look forward to continuing to work with them and finding a solution.
Fire district, Mr.
I have
Mr.
nothing to
Johnson,
report
have
this
any
time.
meeting report? Parks already did that. A cemetery, there's nothing updated on the cemetery. What about Jets or Jets?
Well, Madam President, we continue to investigate the current JEDs that have been submitted to the state, have been recorded, to get familiar with all the development agreements that involve Etna Township, to see where the money's going, what's coming in, where it's going. We've got some NCA issues. We've got another development agreement that we're researching. So we're going to have a lot of good information coming to this board of trustees in the very near future. So as we communicated at the last meeting / work session, the president is going to continue to work with Pete Griggs, who the board hired to assist Etna Township with those situations, better understand those situations, and represent Etna Township's best interest, or attempt to do so in coordination with the board of trustees going forward. So that's going to be a lot of great stuff coming forward.
And
Thank you.
regarding Judge Z, Judge Boards, I would reiterate that I think we should replace some of the appointees, especially after we just learned about the West Lincoln Development Group and the cancellation of the Articles of Corporation, the non-filing of financials, causing a lot of disarray. Again, we have the same individuals on numerous boards, the TIRC, the JEDs, the JED-Z, specifically John Carlisle, Walter Rogers. We need to get good people on these boards that are going to serve this township. And if that West Lincoln Development Group fiasco is an indication, I don't know what will change this board's mind.
Okay, and Madam President, I would caution, us to coming to conclusions too quick. Part of our, well, I'd say a majority of our research is about establishing fact. And once we establish fact, we can be transparent with what that fact is. And we can, once again, have educated discussions on what is in the best interest of Etna Township via the Board of Trustees that pursue those things.
And I do have those facts, 2 binders.
Well, we are researching those facts.
Thank you. Move on to the fiscal officer report.
I don't have a report this time.
I move the resolution to approve the purchase orders as presented.
You should be, we'll have your number.
You got that last number for me, Julie? That you can share with me?
I think this, is this the first?
220607-01.
01.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Now, would that $4,200 need to be amended into this purchase order, or that she passed earlier? Or is that accounted for already? As a,
Question. Julie, did you need a motion for Morpsey before they do the purchase order? Jeff's ready for it. I gave him out to do that motion for you.
Call for the money from Morpsey.
You need, Jeff needs to do the motion for Morpsey before you do the purchase order.
Oh. Motion.
Procedural wise, Roslyn needs to withdraw her motion. You need to withdraw your second.
Okay, I'll withdraw my motion.
does this be added to the
Resolution to
agenda?
approve the purchase orders as presented.
She just, under payment of bills,
Yeah.
she needs a motion to pay the Morpsey.
Yeah, I'll withdraw my second.
Yeah.
So we need a motion to pay this would be the 2022 dues, is that correct?
Not necessarily to pay, but to join again.
Join Morpsey?
For
Need a
2022.
motion to join Morpsey for 2022.
And 2023 if you can, because the dues for 2023 will be due in December.
Okay, so both of those, and the total amount would be for $11,858.40, correct?
Assuming that the 2023 rates are the same as 2022. Yes.
Do you need any higher than that, or it doesn't matter?
I think I'll do another purchase order if I need. What I need right now is for you to prove that you want to be a member of MORPC, the Etna Township to be a member of MORPC for 2022 and 2023.
All right, I'll make a motion that we
Join MORPC.
join Morpsey for the years 2022 and 2023.
And I'll second.
Did our membership lapse, or did they not?
When is it
It
due?
wasn't
In
paid,
September?
it wasn't paid in December. So
Yeah, it wasn't paid.
it's,
We're trying to figure out when we did it last year, how we did it, whether we did it at the end of the year, we did it in the middle of the meeting, we did it at the beginning, we couldn't. Somehow we did it at some meeting.
I would suggest we
find,
but make a master calendar and just put all
Right.
these things on December.
Or,
My suggestion would be to add it to your organizational meetings when you join their chamber and all that.
But if it's due in December,
But if you add it in January for that year, your dues aren't due until the end of the year. Whenever she needs it, Julie's the one that asked for the motion.
we're doing it for
We're
this
just
year,
doing
so
what she asked for. We
next
can
year.
put it whenever you guys want it.
but it's,
it's because of the dollar amount, and historically they approved to be a part of Morp C or not, and so I just didn't want to pay it and not have it approved by the board and to be a member again.
We can discuss, like you're saying, Mark, we can discuss finding out for sure when we need it on there.
I would
Organizational
assume
work
December is due
or
for
somewhere
next
else.
year.
Yes,
In the timeframe.
December will be for 2023 membership.
that's why I
But
put
she's
it on
doing
that
it now,
purchase
so
order.
Yes, correct,
if we wait till January, it's technically late.
correct.
Roll call?
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes.
Is that the only one you needed, Julie?
Yeah, they need to do the purchase order resolution again. It's still the same number one. Yep.
So now you're saying it's the resolution like you made the last one?
Yeah, I move to the resolution to approve the purchase order as presented, which is the 22060701. Is there a second?
I second.
Discussion. Roll call?
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes.
Of course, that pays Mr. Lance then for his
Yes.
invoice that he sent us,
Yes.
correct? Okay, thank you.
Do we want to suggest that invoice should be more specific? It's not itemized.
It's not itemized.
It's, Madam President, it's itemized and the hours are itemized and
I move to pay bills as presented.
Oh, now we can
Well, you guys are in the middle of,
Or
you have a
motion.
roll call your purchase
Yeah,
order.
Oh, I did, I'm sorry.
We did the roll call
Yeah,
for
we
the
did.
purchase
We did roll
orders, we
call.
didn't do the
We
motion
did
to pay
roll
the bills
Oh,
yet.
I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
apologize.
Okay, I move the motion to pay the bill.
Pay the bills? I'll second.
Discussion?
Yes, that was my discussion. I believe Mr. Vance's invoice should be specific, just as if you go to attorney for any work done, it indicates what you're doing. His first bill just indicated various dates with hours, 2 hours, 4.5, 3 hours. When asked for clarification, he did not respond to me. He did respond to Julie, and I got that copy. But just general office, Smoke Road water was in that. I think to keep track of what's going on and just to ensure that proper work's being done, but also to evaluate what our needs are of a township, that it would not be a burden to say he works 2 hours on the 22nd to indicate on that day what was done. Again, any of our attorney bills are itemized just like that. If these things are being done, it's not a great burden again to indicate what is being done on what days. So that's what I would say in the future should be required, and I believe in this contract it states itemized.
it's itemized.
That a month's summary is not itemized.
I mean, what are you looking for on, what do you consider itemized?
Have you ever seen one of our attorney billings?
Oh, yes,
That's
I
itemized.
one right here.
Yeah.
where you.
So, but you can't just say April 22nd, 2 hours, April 25th, 4.5 hours. And then,
I know how they turn those
and then
sometimes.
what he's considering itemized is just a whole paragraph listing investigatory, resident assistance meetings, email communication, Pike Street meeting. I mean, just a laundry list of things.
Go ahead
That's
and read
not
them all.
itemized.
Go ahead and read them all. I mean, there's a whole list of stuff.
No, but
on
I'm
there.
saying it's not itemized.
But, I mean, you were going down the list, there's a lot of stuff on there. And they count.
Right, so I'm saying
Every
every
2 or 3 minutes of your time.
For what days? Don't you want to know for our analysis of how it's working, what is like, what's being done, what day? I'm not saying specific, like in general, Laura's timesheet. At the bottom, I did this, I did this. Just in general. This is not itemized. If you got a bill from your attorney with this, you would reject it.
Madam President.
For transparency, I think we need it.
Yeah, well, it's very transparent. Madam President, if I work day to day, you can let me go tomorrow if you want to let me go. If you need a bill to figure out whether I'm doing my job or not, you know, we're not where we need to be. We've had an extremely productive month, and it's only going to get better going forward. The bill clearly states all the different things we're working on. There's many different things we're working on. We're helping many residents with many issues, in addition to the big picture things, in addition to creating a professional organization, in addition to the policies that have long been discussed as being necessary. All those things are moving forward in the last 30 days.
Right, I agree.
So I think the bill is itemized. I think it's very specific as to what we're accomplishing. And I would request the majority of the Board of Trustees honor my work with the contracted amount that was negotiated and signed upon.
I believe there should be sufficient oversight, and again, with your refusal
Point
to
of
even,
order, roll call,
we're having a discussion.
roll call.
There's still discussion.
Roll call, Ms. Varian?
I just want to state that the contract does say itemized, and we all
Ms.
agreed to
Varian,
that. And what he resubmitted to me was acceptable to me to pay, but if you want further itemizing, then that is something that you guys need to discuss.
Ms. Varian?
Maybe you as a board just needs to vote if you feel that bill is
That's it.
acceptable.
I mean,
We're just voting on.
you're tracking your hours, you're tracking what you're doing, you just put them together.
Right, we understand. You've said it 3 or 4 times. We understand exactly what you're talking about. Madam President, the fiscal officer said she's okay with the itemized bill, and we just need a majority of the...
Roll call?
Mr. Evans?
No.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Under old business, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Mr. Vance and Mr. Singleton in regards to the Skinell and FedEx buffing update, please.
We met with some property owners. What's the name of the road again? Lynn's Road. And Vicki Helsel has been a leader in the regard of organizing the folks that have the issues associated with buffering and the FedEx facility. We met with Skinell, a representative from Skinell, which is the property owner that's leasing the property to FedEx. We discussed the raising of the wall. We discussed the stormwater issues adjacent to the wall on both sides. We discussed the lighting issues. We discussed the noise issues. We discussed tree planting opportunities. I thought it was a very positive meeting. We got a preliminary email response from the Skinell rep who indicated that he was going to follow up with their engineers on the stormwater. He's going to follow up with raising the height of the wall. We discussed the possibility, which the president brought up in the past, as to potentially using the development revenues associated with that specific development to take care of the impacts associated with that specific development and to utilize those resources as flexibility to potentially raise the height of the wall. So that's something we're investigating. We should get additional clarification from the Skinell representative by mid-June, and I'm going to pass that on to the entire Board of Trustees as well as the interested property owners.
And do you know when the as-built are be done and when that review is going to be completed?
Madam President, I understand that question.
I met with Brad Cottrell, with the County Planning Commission, and went out there and he indicated that the as-bills were still being developed, and there would be a site walkthrough to ensure that what was required was actually built. Are you unaware of that process?
Right, I'm working with the Scanal representative. If there is anything that's complementary to what we're trying to achieve, and that information can be sent to me, we will certainly incorporate it into our efforts.
Mr. Singleton's familiar with that, and that's just to ensure that what they were required to build was built. So.
Yes, and that's what we're verifying, as with the storage one, as with the Blue Monkey. When you make a deal that your development is going to adhere to certain specifications, you have an obligation to fulfill what you negotiated. Yeah, so that's where, that was a starting point, and we're moving forward.
For the record, you meant Brad Mercer, not Cottrell.
Mercer, I'm sorry, I'm bad.
That's right. I apologize.
Can I ask a question about the FedEx building? Vance, did they say anything about removing the other houses on the other side of the road that are still on Tollgate?
Yeah, Madam President, that they did, and I'd like Mr. Singleton to go ahead and expand on that.
I saw they took down 2 buildings today, so I'm excited.
The Scanal is contracted with a company to have all the buildings raised that they had purchased, and they did start today with raising those buildings.
I just didn't know if there was like a time date, because I was concerned when they laid all the grass, and I'm like, why would you lay down grass and straw when you have a wreck all behind it? But then I saw that they did take down 2 buildings today, but I didn't know if they had like a timeline.
It's going to be weather permitting, and they're going to get them as quick as possible.
Awesome, thank you.
And Mr. Singleton has been working closely with folks at Scanal to get that done.
Cell phone policy, we all got a copy of the policy. Hopefully, everybody reviewed it.
It's the same policy from the last meeting. I just put it back in your packet so you have it fresh. I'm not aware of any changes.
We're not doing anything with the cell phone policy, we're just acknowledging it,
You probably need a motion to approve it.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to
or
start.
discuss it, or?
Yeah, let's make a motion to approve the cell phone policy.
A second.
Discussion?
I did have questions on if there should be any limitations on types of phones. I mean, are people getting brand new iPhones every year? Who's going to make those determinations?
Have you purchased a phone lately, or see how they upgrade?
Well, yeah, phones could be $1,200, $1,400.
Well, I'm sure.
They could be, so that's where my question is, are we going to have it in the policy of who determines the type of phone purchase or reimbursed, or the type of plan? Is it unlimited? Is the board going to decide each time, yes, you get that phone? I know you indicated you're fine with the flip phone, but
I'm
what
fine with
about?
flip phone.
No, but I'm saying, should that be in the policy? Not a flip phone, but just how, who's going to determine each person?
Well, I would just think you bring it to the board, that cell phone is needed. If it be the road crew, if the zoning, I would bring it to the road
And
crew.
then at that time, you're going to decide what type of phone?
Yeah, decide what type of phone, what kind of plan that needs, so forth.
Madam President, all expenditures are approved by the Board of Trustees.
Sorry.
All expenditures, all township expenditures are approved by the Board of Trustees.
Correct.
So any new cell phone has got to first be approved by the Board of Trustees before it can be purchased.
Well, it could be within the $2,500 allowance.
Well,
And you could get a $1,500 phone.
Well,
Things like that, Mark.
right, it could be, but
Things like that. Who's going to buy a $1,500 phone?
It's a question.
I'm just being honest. It's going to work like that.
well, I would think the answer would be that since there is a concern about the potential cost of a phone, that the individual getting that phone, if somebody does get a phone, they would bring that expenditure to the Board of Trustees to consider.
That was my question.
Okay, and I was trying to help with the response.
then one other point on this, I've seen other cell phone policies that specifically lay out that the township has a right to inspect and a right to the phones, the citizen phones. Should that be included in this policy? So it's clear that if there's any question like, hey, we need to get data on the phone, that employee must provide the phone.
This policy was written by our attorney, and we discussed this, him and I, sent you after we discussed it, I sent you all the draft. So that was not in there. So that's separate.
Correct, and a municipal phone, a phone owned by a local government, the contents of that phone are absolutely available for public inspection and scrutiny.
Or I guess we can amend it later if we need to, but I think it should be clear.
Roll call.
We can always do something similar, like when you guys get credit cards, there's like a waiver you sign off on, and so you can always have a waiver when they receive cell phone as a township phone. It specifies all that if that helps the situation. Kind of like when you give them, like they're receiving some township property or something, so maybe we can do something, work with them on getting something that can coincide with the policy that says you're responsible, kind of like the credit cards, you're responsible for any personal charges by accident.
And since these cell phones are touches, this is a number that can be published, like it'll be on their
We could
website
probably do
for
something.
contact and all that, correct?
We could probably do something like
Yeah,
extra to
we'll
go
on
with
the
the
website.
policy like that.
Are we gonna have an Etna Township policy that they have to join, or how are we gonna do that? Are we gonna pay the policy, or are we gonna pay the individual? I know we have a group,
Whatever.
you get cheaper rate for the group.
Yeah, that's exactly what they
Township
talk about,
phone,
business rate for government, it's a lot cheaper.
The
Yeah.
board would have to decide what carrier, what, right?
I think at this tonight, you're
Only
just
got
looking at the
the
policy, but that's stuff we could try to work on, Mark, and we can add that to it, do a waiver kind of sheet or like,
Otherwise,
said, we can come up with something about the actual cost of the cell phone.
All the specifics associated with the phone can be provided to the Board of Trustees before the expenditure is voted on by the Board of Trustees.
Well, my point is just most other cell phone policies have this information in it, so each employee's not coming to the board saying, it's
Why not?
spelled out how much is allowed,
I think we should
how
do
much
this.
per month.
They come in the board, and reflect that, state their need, why they need it, and
Do we wanna put that in this then, to say that all employees who request a phone must come? to
well, it's
the
an
Board of
expenditure,
Trustees?
still has to be provided for, has to be presented as an expenditure, correct?
Not if they use a credit card.
Well, we don't have to do it, we can just do it as a,
This is a credit card.
I
That's
just
not what
think-
credit cards were designed for.
no, not. And I don't agree with doing it to the credit card.
I just think it's deficient, but we can modify it later.
Roll call?
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes. New business, community authority, which is NCA.
Do you want me to take that?
Madam President, would you like to introduce the NCA item? We have the issue associated with a potential liaison and the issue associated with bills.
Right, right. Yeah, the NCA, which is a new community authority board, it is not a trust, it is not the township that's involved, but I will let Mr. Evans explain it since I just found out about it a couple of weeks ago, maybe a week ago. I had my first dealings with that board last Thursday, and I ran across some bills that we're paying as a township. So I wanted Mr. Evans to kind of present that information, to explain it.
Regarding bills, Ice Miller was hired by the previous board. I believe it goes back to 2020, or maybe Kip said 2019, I thought it was 2020, to help create the NCA. The NCA is new community authority. It's a partnership. It requires one residential subdivision. Mr. Ron Sabatino volunteered his smoke, I believe it's a smoke road code, is up on the north end of the new park. And the newer warehouse facilities were required to join. One of the last ones before FedEx actually required any future ones to be in the NCA. Otherwise, I think they could pull out. I still need a copy of that DCA. If the office can get me that. But basically, the attorney, Kip Waller, has been working with the township to create this. All the costs will be reimbursed by the NCA upon its inception and funds coming in. The commercial properties are assessed at 9 cents per square foot, so a million square foot, $90,000 coming into this. And basically what we're working on right now is an intergovernmental agreement, an IGA, between the Etna Township and the NCA. Now this isn't Etna Township, however, it was created by Etna Township, by the previous board members, pushed, and we appoint 3 of the members. The county appoints 4 of them on the board.
So when you say we appointed, who's we?
Well, Kip Miller suggested that the board appoint, but Mr. Carlisle had it that was at his discretion. So it was Mr. Sabatino, R.J. Sabatino, and another employee was appointed by Mr. Carlisle. So once those terms are up, the board, we can. But again, that's where Kip Miller suggested the board, but Mr. Carlisle went with just he.
The township trustees didn't appoint that though. That
Right.
was never
That's
done
where-
through our meeting.
That's where Kip Miller suggested in the creation of this that the board choose the members. Mr. Carlisle wanted to choose them.
So I just want
and
you
not
to
go through
clarify
the board.
that the trustees never appointed.
And that's what I
This
said.
board of trustees never.
That's what I
appointed
said.
that.
Our attorney indicated it should be the board, but I think it should be the board going forward. But so right now, they're working on, there's 2 different parts of that, of getting it instituted with the property owners and filing that paperwork. We had a meeting here, they were supposed to go over that. That wasn't finished. I'm not sure if Mr. Sabatino got anywhere with our attorney with that. But this IGA was presented to the NCA board with some modifications here. As I was told, the previous intentions were, this is to benefit the community at what the township asks. You know, we want it for the park, and before it was kind of a rubber stamp that the NCA do it. In talking with the NCA, and what I believe is right is there should not be any rubber stamps. The township should request funding for something, say park infrastructure, and then the NCA board has to approve. There's no just rubber stamp. So that was a few of the changes in here. And again, this is after going with Kip Waller through this. I believe it's satisfactory, and we've been having NCA meetings here for a while, and I'm shocked you just learned about this last week.
Well,
Because we've been talking about this development and NCA, and our meeting with the 310 Palmer property, we were talking about the NCA and all that back in November.
back to November, that's the key. But now that I'm seeing the bigger picture of how the township is involved as far as reimbursement, is that?
Right, we'll be reimbursed all our attorney
We're gonna
expenses.
pay it right now.
We've been paying.
Right, exactly. And it looks like we had some deals since we came here in January under the new board. So it looks like we picked up some additional billing.
Correct, and it's
Like, yeah.
substantial fee, I believe it's $590 an hour.
Correct.
So,
So it sounds like we probably need a liaison from the township side to see and to oversee how our money is being spent, because what if the board doesn't move forward? What if it doesn't happen?
Well, I've been working since elected, and this was one of the things I've been working on from the beginning. So I'm not sure about liaison. I'm fine with continuing this, and I actually hoped that the NCA board would approve and make changes so that it could come back here and we discuss, because somebody's got to move first on this, and that's where through my discussions with our attorney came up with this. They were supposed to review it, make their changes, make their whatever, and then come back to us for a full discussion. They chose not to move on it at the request of Mr. Santino. So here's where we are now. And this was something that was approved by the last board, so maybe Mr. Johnson is familiar with some of it, but the attorney's fees have been being paid since at least 2020 when they approved this. So this was approved by the last board. So for the funds to go through, this needs to happen so we can get the funds for the park infrastructure, for all that. The funds that are assessed on the residential portion of Smoke Road development, that will go towards Smoke Road for his either infrastructure, beautification, whatever. The commercial stuff will be used for the district, which the intent was the park. And parks are expensive. They're looking at approximate revenue in the beginning of about 210 to 230,000. That's not a lot of money. Consider the bonds on or bond payments on the refugee for 3.5 million are about 230,000 a year. So to build a park for 3.5, it's going to take a bit. So we need to get this through. Do you guys have any questions? Or?
Yeah, Madam President, whenever appropriate.
Yes, please.
Yes, there's what about Etna Township is I think invested in excess of $100,000 worth of attorney's fees associated with this particular NCA. And once the development is up and running, then Etna Township is going to be reimbursed. When is that going to be?
Well, we need to get it implemented because I think to get it on the tax rolls and stuff is August.
Yep.
Is it end of August or beginning of August?
Sometime in August.
Sometime in August, it's got to be certified on the tax rolls, and then those payments are due immediately. So those come in, and then they'll be transferred. But all our costs will be reversed. So that first year, and a lot of these businesses are already functioning. Those monies will come this year. If we delay too long, we're going to miss that, and it'll be next year.
So this area, this development area has existing businesses which are paying taxes and generating revenues.
It is FedEx, it is the other ones, Core 5. I'm trying to think. There's a few.
Is Ashley Furniture on the side?
Ashley. And then, like I said, in the DCA, I believe Core 5 negotiated, because basically they were told, if you want to develop, you've got to be part of this. And that was the same thing with on that 310 Palmer. When we met with them, I said, are you going to be part of the NCA? And they're like, well, we have to. So this is to help offset some of the impact of the commercial development in the community. And like I said, the purpose was to go towards the park infrastructure. Now the NCA board could disagree, but they're not going to be able to approve anything for that money without our approval too. So it's cross approval.
So drew that contract for?
They drew it up, and I had a couple concerns about ensuring that we had more approval. Like I said, it went from them being a rubber stamp of whatever this board wanted, and it was just passed through to a mutual approval. So I wanted to ensure that was in there, and that was a major. I can show you the red lines if you want. Send me and what my recommended changes were.
Mr. Santino, have you seen this document? Or
Yes,
since you're on the
clarification. Most of the stuff are remembered.
Ron, can you go to the mic, because it won't come on the tape. Thank you.
Mark, I'm not going to take issues. You're generally on point with most of the stuff you said. There was some technical things that weren't completely accurate, but I think it's irrelevant. We've made all of our comments to the documents. My understanding is Kip Walters is ready to distribute them. I don't call the board meetings, or I would have already called one, but another representative, Alexa, the county calls our board meetings. And so we're prepared to approve them in concept. We've been involved in doing these in other places, and I think that the manner in which a resolution is passed should consider approving it in form such that any modifications do not materially impact the township. As Mark is right, this thing should have been done years ago. Years ago. The township lost hundreds of thousands of dollars because this wasn't done years ago, that the money isn't coming in, it's just not going anywhere. So August is a real deadline in order to begin to file the declarations and have it move forward. I think the money doesn't come when they file it, that's for tax lien year of next year though. I'm not sure we'll go retroactive. Kip can clarify whether we've already lost out on 2022 taxes. So time's important. We're prepared to approve it in form. My suggestion for you all is to consider approving it in form, that any modifications that may be happening in the future do not negatively affect either party, and then we can still make minor modifications as time goes on.
Did you meet with Kip over the holiday and kind of flush out a lot of everything?
Yes.
Were there major changes to the IGA, or was that to your declarations?
To the declaration.
Not the IGA?
Yeah, I think there was like one sentence that was added. I didn't change anything else in the declaration. We didn't change anything else in the declaration.
Okay. Kip has not forwarded that change to me, so I'm not sure. Do you know what that change was, or?
I don't have it with me. He hasn't sent it to me either.
One of my concerns was that it's the residential and commercial, that the commercial pot of money wasn't used for the residential benefit. That residential, funds stay within, commercial benefits the community as a whole. So,
I mean, my recommendation would be for someone on behalf of the township to reach out to your lawyer and to demand that he send this to you.
And yes, and Madam Chair, if appropriate, that is something that you've taken a lead on, and this is an example of, we've got a lot of different development agreements in Etna Township, and this just came to our attention. There's a debt in excess of $100,000 associated with an NCA that appears needs to have been functioning prior to now. The indication is that the township has lost revenues because it is not up and running, and that's something that we need to address, obviously.
and that's what I've been addressing and pushing forward and dealing with since day one and before, so.
Okay.
I'm not sure how the township spent $100,000 to date, and our NC board will want to look at those invoices before we approve reimbursement. We're doing one for less than a third of that in a different township.
Right.
Well,
With Mr. Griggs.
Dragging on since 2019 or 20, so that's one of the things that I'm trying to do is get these things completed, do them properly, because a lot of stuff wasn't done properly previously. The Gen 7 was delayed. We had an improper board member vote on there. So I'm going to reach out to Kip.
The Madam President has a meeting with Kip on the 24th, and it's my understanding that you had an interest in being that liaison, as you are taking the lead on all the development agreements for the township at this point in time. And once we find things of interest to the entire board, then we're immediately turning those things over to the entire board.
Right.
But you have to have a point of contact in those regards. You can't have 3 trustees negotiating administrating individual development agreements on behalf of the township.
So the trustee that took it upon himself to educate himself, learn about this, deal with this from the get-go, you're taking off to give to a trustee that is not familiar with this to be point on it, and that's going to expedite things. And I think that's inappropriate, and I believe I should continue to represent our board on this because I'm very familiar with it. And why would this be just another thing that is taken away for that sake?
Oh, Madam President, I can.
Yes.
If we have one trustee who is in a leadership role for a matter of months and is very knowledgeable of all the details associated with these agreements, and we have other trustees, at least one other trustee who is not knowledgeable at all, obviously she did not get the information she needed from the most knowledgeable to be knowledgeable. So as a management consultant, my recommendation would be that that's the best candidate to get educated as to what's in place and make sure everybody's up to speed.
Then under that.
But it's going to be a decision for the board to make if a motion is made to appoint a liaison.
Then under that thought process, I should be over the unionization because she hasn't shared anything with that. I mean, this is.
What's the unionization got to do with this?
He's saying that because someone didn't keep up to date on everything, this is just another thing of let's consolidate power. And again, I'm worried that we're going to miss deadlines because you want to give it to a trustee that we talked about this back in November with the developers, the NCA, and I even forwarded to you information of what NCAs are, what CRAs are. I was trying to educate you on this, and I've got the emails.
Right. Well,
I'm not saying it's.
I'm just saying you were either successful or you weren't. It seems like you were not successful. So at this point in time, the majority,
I'm going to make a motion that we appoint the board president, whoever is the board president, as the liaison to this NCA. And that way, if you're board president, that's what I would
be
do.
The most interested, the most qualified, the most.
I make my motions on the floor.
I'll second.
Discussion, I think this is very inappropriate. This is just another power play, just like with the Comprehensive Plan Committee. This is ridiculous. This is going to impact the community. I'm discussing it right now. This is going to impact the community. If we get delayed on this, this is just another further thing, like I said, with the JED 7, and this board seems to be fine with inappropriateness just everywhere and consolidation of power.
And you're not?
No.
You're not?
No.
Okay.
I tried to get this board to do activities in the beginning and nobody wanted to do anything. Order, please, if the president's not done. But this is just, what do you want me to do for my $24,304 a year? Do you just want to take everything away from me? Do you want me not to service the community? Because I've been trying to serve the community with the light issues, and I've been getting just ignored by your zoning inspector for a month.
Madam President, when we're talking about the Board of Trustees getting educated as to development agreements, everybody wants to be equally educated.
For making that motion, if you want to know, is what is your relationship with Mr. Sabatino?
What is my relationship with him?
Are you on good terms with him? Or are you bad terms? Because you lambasted his son when he was in here.
And his son was out of order.
Well, I'm just saying.
So then if I become president, is that then inappropriate at that point? That's a bad way. I mean, just because someone has a very good, cozy relationship with the developer should mean one thing, or past trustees, or anything like that.
I'm looking for people that can work together.
And I have been working with them.
Work with Sabatino, Mr. Sabatino.
And the board president of the NCA is Alexis. It is not Mr. Sabatino. And the county controls, I have a very good relationship with the county. I have a very good relationship with the school board. And I actually meet with David Hodge, other attorneys that.
Do they charge us for that?
What's that?
Do they charge us for all those meetings?
What do you mean, no?
David Hodge.
But I work with everybody. I'm even willing to talk and work with Mr. Vance. That's the thing. You guys are just looking at it as just control, power. You can do whatever you want on this board because you got the majority vote, but it's not right. It's not going to serve this community.
I think it serves it.
Roll call, Ms. Varian, please.
Mr. Evans?
No.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes. Okay, Lincoln County Engineer request for engineering assistant over at the Lakeland Hills. Is there a motion to request the engineer to assist from the Lincoln County Engineer for the Lakeland Hills?
I make a motion. This was my suggestion to approve the assistance request from the engineer to solve the ongoing issue of the drainage and washout on Lakeland Hill Drive there.
Is that all the motion, or is that really discussion? When I go to the minutes, that kind of sounds more like discussion.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the township request for engineering assistance for Lakeland Drive.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
The reason for this is just another of the many ongoing issues that I've been trying to take care of around the township that has just been going on year and year and year that we need to solve for these residents. And this is one of them.
And that's the resident caused the problem right there.
Resident.
But that's all right. We'll let the engineering look at it. That's the reason I voted. That's the reason I seconded it.
I'm not sure how a resident causes our road to be washed out.
We'll let the engineer figure it out for us. I've lived there 35 years. I know exactly what goes on over there.
But a resident is causing water to go across our road and wash out the berm, causing a road to crack.
Causing the berm to the road is what's happening there.
Well, what we've been doing is putting just asphalt millings in there, and just every rain, it just washes out. We can, I mean, there's the kitty boxes, there's a lot of things we could do, but it's a new road and it's already deteriorating on that side. So I thought it was prudent to get the engineer involved for his recommendations.
I'm agreeing
Well,
with
the
you.
good news is he
Well, I'm explaining
seconded.
it. I'm explaining
That's
it.
great.
If you don't, it's transparency and information, because I don't want you saying that you didn't know about it.
Mark, let's move on, please.
We do roll call.
Roll call.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes.
Mark, if you guys would all sign that, I don't mind scanning it in tomorrow unless you want to handle it.
No, you can. Thank you.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Trustee comments?
Oh, sorry, trustee
Wait a minute,
comments.
you
I'm
got-
so sorry.
And we've got other stuff up there.
Sorry,
Executive session.
I can turn. We got a proposal taking off. Trustee comments?
Yes. The 4 acres off Laurel Hill Drive. We need to do something with that. I asked Ms. Brown for information on that. Still waiting on that. I think we need to do something with that property. I don't know why there's a delay. It could be handled. Maybe that's something you could give to Mr. Vance. I would, but you know, that is. Streaming and archiving meetings. I see cell phones are very important. When is that going to be important for this board? I continue to do so, but I think, again, to be transparent, not only our trustee meetings should be streamed and archived, but our other township meetings. So I think the board should move quickly on that. Also, social media to promote, and that actually going back to Laura, social media to promote township news, events, and announcements. Why don't we have one like everybody else's? I think it's a way to communicate to the community. I do so quite a bit and is very effective with the blessing box, other activities. when we needed people to volunteer for comprehensive plan committee, that would have been perfect. So again, I don't know why this board, I brought this up before, we need to move on that, to be transparent and communicative with the community. The light trespass issues, again, before I even took office, I've been concerned about those, trying to get those moving. And as, again, I tried to do this in executive session, but Mr. Singleton's refused to respond to me for over a month on many of these items and withheld documents that were sitting on his desk when I asked for them and refused to provide them until a later date. I think that's inappropriate. It needs to work for all board members, and especially when we're asking reasonable questions to help residents. It needs to be provided. So as a supervisor, I think I've asked you numerous times to handle it, discuss it, talk in executive session, and I'm just ignored. So we've got to do what's right for the community.
Yeah, you talked by email, talk to me about that.
Numerous emails.
Like I said, yeah, numerous emails, but you have not talked to me about it.
Because we can't talk outside of meetings. That's improper. We got to follow the law. The West Licking Development Group, again, it just came to find out that a board where money was directed from the township developments into this CIC development group was mismanaged by, and the board members John Carlo and Walter Rogers, a former fiscal officer. The financial documents weren't filed, the state certificate was revoked, and we've still got money in bank. I'm like, what are we doing here as a township? And why do we let these individuals remain on other boards if this is how they govern for this township? And then, again, consultant duties. How, if Mr. Vance works for this board, how can you allow him not to respond to me, not to include me, and won't even include me on copies of text or emails for information? And he's speaking of, well, you know, you did a bad job of educating Ms. McKee, another trustee on the NCA. He's not providing any information whatsoever, even after repeated requests. Do I have to, as a resident, do records requests? Because that'll be a big hassle. So please include me in the communications, a copy of that. How many more minutes do I have, Mr. Vance, for the rest of the clock?
I think you're out.
You had 3 minutes.
No, I don't believe so.
And
I mean, to limit a trustee in this is ridiculous. And then to talk about the solar farms and that, as Judy, I do believe that is a concern. That again, it goes to regulating the development we accept in this township. It's just not whatever they want. So I think on the comprehensive plan committee and elsewhere, because this board doesn't have to follow it. So I think the citizens really got to push on that. As far as the, again, storage one, they've been living that for 5 years.
got it.
And as a resident, again, before I took my seat, I bring that up and nothing's really done. We've got to enforce these issues that are impacting. I borrowed Tasco's light meter. I mean, it's ridiculous, the amount of light that shines on the backyard. And it's just repeated issues. And why aren't we working with that? And again, it goes back to Mr. Vance. Mr. Vance says, well, I'll look into it. Well, I've been looking into it. So why don't you use me as a resource for the information to get things going, just like Skinnell, okay? So we need to start working for this township, everybody, Mr. Singleton, all these trustees, everyone in this township. That's our job. That's all I have to say.
No.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, just because things are said at a public meeting does not make them true.
Point of order, is this trustee comments?
Oh, she just,
Go ahead, speak, Mr.
okay, and you had the go. The fiscal officer takes care of the public records requests, and I have made a point to copy the fiscal officer on communications updates that I send to the entire board of trustees. So I just learned that I've never done that, and the fiscal officer herself can attest that I update the entire board when I update anyone on the board associated with projects that essentially, you know, are an item of interest, an item of consideration, previous consideration, and going forward. And my services as a management consultant, you know, one of my selling points was, hey, I can come here and help you get things done. So I do have an appreciation for the groundwork that you've laid in a lot of different areas, but I think at this point in time, we need to resolve some of these situations and actually accomplish these things. And so I appreciate your history with some of these things, and if it's beneficial to what I'm trying to accomplish as your management consultant, I will reach out and ask, but I haven't had the need to at this point. And so,
if you don't ask.
With that, I'd just like to thank you very much for the chance to rebut.
And one question on the emails. You're using your private emails still, just copying operations. If someone responds and doesn't respond to all, we don't capture those.
See, and once again, just because you say it at a public meeting doesn't mean it's accurate. All my Etna Township communications before I got access to the operation email address May 2nd, 100% of the Etna business associated with my business email or the operation email is on the Etna Township server. And the fiscal officer has access to 100% of it.
And I'm talking about when people respond to you, unless they do.
All my emails, Madam President, are available on
I
the
do have a
server.
comment that I'd like to make now that everyone's talked. I'm going to support my employees, including the two sitting over there in the chair, including those two at the table, and Laura sitting there. I think they do a fine job here. They've done what I ever asked them to do. And they got my 100% backing. And no, I'm just telling you, that's my comments. And I want people to know that they do a good job, contrary to what other people say.
So if I can show you that there's been no response on many issues for almost a month. That's the issue. And you don't want to address it.
Right. You have a motion to go into executive session?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session. For ORC 121.22G1 to consider the compensation of public employee. This is to conduct Laura Brown's interview and employee review, not interview, review. Was there?
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes.
Are there documents or?
Yes.
827.
Oh, God, root canals seem so much better.
They have to get a survey every day to see. I think they said because they split the lots.
We have to go off.
We're now out of executive session. I make a motion
Go
to
ahead.
come out of executive session.
I'll second.
I've had enough.
Discussion? No?
I
Roll
don't think
call?
there's discussion.
Roll call?
Roll call to.
Mr. Evans?
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes.
I did 8:37.
No, it's 8:37.
That's what she said.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I didn't hear you. My ears.
All right. I'd like to make a motion that we approve of a raise for Laura Brown to $22 raise to $23 an hour.
I, second.
Discussion?
Anybody? Discussion? The roll
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Don't spend it all in one place.
Motion to adjourn. I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. McKee?
Yes.
Adjourned at 8:30.